everyone, it's Melissa, and welcome to this week's Watch and Stitch with Anita Goodesign. Today, I'm going to be going over the technique of doing a watercolor confetti card. Now, this includes embroidery on paper, and I'm very excited to show you how easy this technique is to accomplish. In order to do this technique, you will need a piece of cardstock, usually in a 5x7 card, pre-folded is fine, a piece of base fabric or applique fabric of your choice to go on top of the card. We're going to need various shades of organza as well as some quick cutting scissors, and then of course the embroidery threads of your choice. I have the design loaded to my machine, and I've hooped a piece of tearaway stabilizer, and from here we're ready to go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and stick the hoop in the machine and we can begin. With the placement stitch ran for your card, it's now time to take our 5x7 card and place the front of the card within the placement stitches. It's okay to have the rest of the card hanging off to the side of the hoop. From here, we'll take some tape and secure the card in place. Once taped down, you can run the tacking stitch to secure the card. Once the tacking stitch has been ran for the card and it's secured, you can remove that excess tape, and it's now time to lay our base fabric. We have interfaced our fabric with fusible interfacing on the back, so you'll want to lay the fabric right side facing up over the stitches on the card. Those tacking stitches do act as a placement stitch, so make sure you lay your fabric at this point in the design. From here, we can transfer the hoop back to our machine and proceed to run the tacking stitch. Once we've secured our base fabric to the card with that tacking stitch step, it's now time to trim away the excess fabric from around the edges. For this technique, I like to use the curved tip embroidery scissors and lift the edge of your fabric and trim tight to the tacking stitch line. Once the excess fabric has been trimmed away, it's then time to run the decorative finish on the edge of the base fabric. We call these stitches the candle wicking stitches, and they look kind of like little star-shaped patterns along the edge of your applique. This will help secure the fabric to the card and give it a decorative edge. Once the candle wicking stitches have been run along the edge of the card's applique fabric, it's now time to move on to the decorative embroidery portion. For the card I'm stitching out with the cute gnome on the front, the words on the card are going to come first. So at this point, I'll select the thread that I want for my text and continue to run the decorative embroidery. Once the embroidery for the text on our card has finished, we've now moved on to where we are going to run the placement for our confetti. Now with watercolor confetti, you first have to run the placement stitch to indicate where we're going to be placing our watercolor technique. Be sure to have on hand some different colors of organza so that we can create the fun effect. I'm going to go ahead and run the placement stitch for the first portion of our design, which is going to be the beard on the little gnome's face. Once we've run the placement stitch for the first section of the watercolor effect, we're going to take our pieces of organza and start cutting little bits. Once you've cut your confetti pieces, it's time to start layering them over the placement stitch area. Remember, the more you layer them, the more color that will be saturated in that particular spot. Once you're satisfied with your layering of the organza, take your larger piece of organza and place it over top to help trap the little bits in place. From here, we'll use some tape and secure it to the card. Once your organza is taped down, we can return the hoop to the machine and run the tacking step. Once the tacking stitch has been run to secure the confetti, we can go ahead and remove the tape securing it in place, and we'll use our curved scissors to trim around the confetti area. Now, the important thing to remember with this technique is the longer you leave an edge along the tacking stitch, the more it'll look like watercolor bleeding outside of the lines. So just remember not to trim directly to the tacking stitch, but to leave a little bit hanging out on the edges. Once you've trimmed away the excess organza and have that watercolor effect going on, the first section should look similar to this. Once that piece is complete, we can go on and run the next placement stitch for the following piece of watercolor confetti. Once we've run the placement stitch for the next section, we'll continue the same way we did with the beard, where we trim up little pieces of our next color of organza and sprinkle it over the placement stitch area. Once you're pleased with your confetti, you can cut a larger piece to lay over the whole space. Use some tape and secure it over the applique space. Once taped down, you can return the hoop to your machine and run the tacking stitch step. With the next section tacked down, we can go ahead and remove our tape and then use our scissors to trim away the excess again, remembering to leave a little bit of an edge around that tacking stitch line in order to create the watercolor effect. Once trimmed, our little gnome's hat should look similar to this. From this point, we can move on to the last section of our watercolor applique, which will be the little heart balloon that he's holding in his hand. So let's go ahead and run that placement stitch. All right, everyone, we're down to the last shape for the watercolor confetti section, which is going to be the small heart balloon that the gnome is holding. So I have some red organza here to make the balloon really pop, and we'll just cut out some more confetti shapes. And as a reminder, there's no rhyme or reason to how big or little your shapes need to be or what shape they need to be. It's however you want to cut them up. Once we're pleased with the color of the watercolor that we have going on, we can take our larger piece and cover this area again. Use some tape to secure it in place, and then we'll return it to the machine to tack it down. All right, once the heart is tacked down, we can again remove that excess tape, and just like we've been doing in the past few pieces, we will take our scissors again and trim away that excess, leaving a little bit of that bleeding watercolor effect. Try to give you guys a better view. There we go. And like I said, remember not to trim all the way to the tacking stitch line. That's what gives this watercolor that look of it bleeding outside of the shape. Again, I gotta blow away all the fuzzies. If you have canned air, this is a great project for that as well. And I kind of like it like this. I think it should bleed a little bit more so than you would expect at first. So there we have it. And once you have finished trimming your watercolor, it should look a little bit like this. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the last step in my card design, which is going to be the finishing bean stitch decorative details throughout the card, and then we'll be finished. So let's go ahead and run that last step. All right, everyone. When your card is complete, it should look like this. And he is so cute. It says, "A love like no other." This is an adorable, quick and easy project to do, and it's also really fun. In order to finish off the card, we are going to pop it out of the hoop, and then we'll remove that excess stabilizer. All right, once our design has been unhooped, we then can use a pair of standard scissors and trim away that excess tearaway. Now, the great thing about tearaway is that it can be torn, but with our delicate paper card, I highly recommend you just take a pair of scissors and trim along the back side of the card to remove it. With the excess tearaway removed, we then have our finished card. I hope you all enjoyed learning how to do watercolor confetti on an embroidered card with me today, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.